You're listening to Surviving and Thriving with Renisha, a podcast about life, mental health, and personal growth. Here I talk about my journey living with borderline personality disorder, depression, and anxiety, and how I'm learning to love myself despite it. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to my podcast, my channel. If you are new here, then my name is Renisha. I go by Reny or just Riri Shop online, many names. But this is Surviving and Thriving, a podcast. And I am changing things up. So for those of you who maybe have followed me up until now, you know that I've primarily focused on my healing, recovery, specifically mental health. And that's shifted over time as I've continued to shift and evolve and grow and just learn more about myself, about these different diagnoses and labels and different things that I'd used for so long to identify myself and to help understand the pain and the mental turmoil and emotional struggles that I was facing for so long. And that has definitely evolved over time from someone who heavily identified with the labels bipolar to borderline to autism. And it's just continued to evolve as I've learned more about who I am in the earthly sense. But some of you may know that a big part of my healing recovery has been also very spiritual in nature. And so just with the current events and just so much of the dense energies and so much of the heaviness and so much of the pain that's prevalent in the collective right now, I feel so called to share authentically. And this will take a more spiritual lens. So if that's something you are uncomfortable with and don't resonate with at this time, then I am so sorry. And I hope that you find spaces that are more aligned for you. But this is the direction that I feel called to take at this time. And so I just want to start by encouraging those of you who have found me, because it's not a mistake. I don't believe in coincidences. I want to I want all of us to just take a moment to just be fully present in whatever it is that we're feeling right now. Take a moment to acknowledge it, because I think there is some friction when we walk through life and we ignore what's tugging at our heart space. We ignore what's coming up for us consistently. So if right now you're feeling heavy, if right now you're feeling fear or anxiety or overwhelm, if it's the opposite of that, because we live in a world of polarity here, right? If you're feeling hopeful or optimistic or joyous or however you might be feeling, just be present with that. Take a moment to sit with that, acknowledge that, write it down if you need to, call it out if you need to. But it's important for us to acknowledge how we're feeling and where we are in the present moment and to sit with that. And the culture, especially if you live in the US like I do, the culture of business as usual and just pushing ahead and moving forward and staying productive and meeting our deadlines and deliverables and so forth, we forget our humanness. It's disconnecting us from ourselves. And so I think the first thing we can do is acknowledge where we are, acknowledge how we feel, acknowledge what's coming up for us, regardless of whether that's something that's hard to grapple with or maybe not so much. And secondly, I just want to say, I feel called to share that with all of the heaviness that is persisting in the collective, one, I extend my love and empathy to every single person that's been impacted by all of the very stressful events happening in the world. And please forgive my background noise. I do have a child. But it's important for us to just take a moment, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge the very real struggles that people are going through at this time. I live in California, so if you're someone who's been impacted by the fires in LA, I'm in San Diego, and I'm not too far from the recent fires we had here. Whether you're on the other side of the country and you've been impacted by previous natural disasters like flooding, hurricanes, snowstorms, or whether you're somewhere else in the world and you've been impacted by war or famine or any other natural disaster. There's just so much happening, political upheaval, and a lot of just injustice we're witnessing at this time. And so I want to take a moment to acknowledge that reality and the very real emotions and fears and anxieties that they bring up for many. And I also want to give a message of hope, or at least I hope that this is how it's received, because I do know it can be hard to hear messages of hope, messages of optimism in times like this. And so I want to caveat by saying I'm not a love and light girly. I can come across that way, but I'm absolutely not. I think it's important for us to sit with every single emotion we have. Every single emotion we have is important. I am also someone that's huge on duality and polarity. We have contrast in this life, and I'm someone that, if you are new here, I've openly expressed all of the complex trauma and difficulties that I've gone through in my life. And so I want to always make sure that I'm acknowledging the suffering and those contrasts of life, right? But also, because I believe in polarity and contrast, right? When there are good times, I can focus in on those who are struggling. And when there are hard times, I can focus in on the light. And so that's what I'm here to do today. I want to remind you all that when it feels like the bad, and I hate these words, but it's true, when it feels like the bad guys, the villains, those who they really boost up and elevate their power out of division and fear and hatred and this illusion, because that's what it is, that we are all separate and some of us are more worthy and some of us are less worthy, which is completely untrue. We are all connected. And us forgetting that has led to so much strife in this lifetime and in so many lifetimes. When it feels like these people are winning or are, succeeding or getting ahead, I just want to remind you that that is an illusion. It's not true. Anytime you're moving from a place of division or hatred or fear, you are not winning anything. There's no winning for any of us when we forget that we are all connected, when we forget that we are all family, when we forget that not only are we connected to one another, but we're connected to the entire earth. So when we live as if we're all separate things and we trample on the earth and we tear down our brothers and sisters because we, for some reason, don't see how we are all interconnected, that only leads to more suffering, more pain. That's it. No one wins in this circumstance, regardless of how it looks or how it appears on the outside. No one wins at that. But I'm also here to remind you that contrast and polarity always exist. There is never all bad, ever. There is never all bad. And so while there is so much suffering in the world right now, and so much heaviness in the world right now, love still exists. There is still so much love. There is still so much opportunity. There is still so much wisdom and hope. There are things to look forward to. There are people out there who continue to make a difference, and there have always been people who will push to try to make the world a better place. Those people have always existed throughout every tragedy, throughout every difficulty, every challenge, throughout history. So just like it's been human nature and we tend to fixate, I think we're biologically wired to fixate on things that we're scared of because it keeps us safe to a certain degree, right? So we tend to focus on how humans have historically caused harm. And so when we see the things that are happening now, we see cycles repeating. And as someone who's neurodivergent, trust me, I see it. I definitely see it. We focus in on that. We focus in on how we've always caused harm, on the injustices, on the pain, on the suffering, and we forget. We forget about those who martyred themselves for a greater cause and those who've contributed to this world in a beautiful way, who have led to some of the changes and some of the progress that we've seen today, even if it feels like and it seems like and we see some of those things going backwards. I want to tell you what I see, and I hope that it gives you hope, because while I do see those things and I can focus on those things, and I have days where I'm in despair because of those things, and I'm empathizing with people, and especially, I understand and have been impacted firsthand, right? But at the same time, I want to tell you what I also see and what I also hear. I see people who are organizing in the community to try to find ways to help people they have never met before. Whether it's, compiling resources and supplies for people unsheltered on the street, whether it's sending, baby materials, baby wipes, formula, food, clothing, or even just money, just funds to people impacted by the fires in LA or even here in San Diego, or whether it's just going out to help rebuild in communities on the East Coast that's been impacted by flooding and hurricanes, whether it's uplifting the voices of people who have been suppressed and oppressed in countries that we've never even visited, giving them a voice. Some of the stories that I saw specifically as it related to Palestine, for example, it was because there were people here, people who've never met these people who have never even been to the Middle East, sharing stories, sharing messages, uplifting families, uplifting voices. Do you know what that is? That's love. And so, just in the same ways we're seeing people who are spreading hatred and division, there are people who are spreading love. And right now, we have a choice. We can choose to focus all of our energy, which is powerful. There's many of our cultures have understood that since the beginning of time. This is not a new age concept. It's not new. None of this is new. Our ancestors, indigenous ancestors from across the world, and that includes Europeans. I know we keep trying to push that as a separate thing. I'm saying every single culture at some point recognized our power, the power in our energy, the power of spirit in some capacity, and that's been lost. That's been lost to imperialism and colonization. That's been lost, and that is hurting everybody. Everybody is impacted by that. And now we're becoming aware of that on a larger scale, and it's heavy and it's overwhelming, but it's necessary. We need to see it. We need to see what's wrong so we can fix it. And so, like I said, we have a choice now. This energy that we're giving to the people, to the things that are causing more harm, they don't deserve that. We can be informed and not give away our energy and not give away our power continuously day after day. I know that I was scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling incessantly in October. I was like in the pits of despair. I had fallen into a deep depression again, and I was really trying to push through, and it was part of the reason why I really struggled being consistent with the podcast. Is because I was allowing myself to spiral. And here's the thing. I support and work in racial justice, and I'm in these spaces, in the community organizing spaces. And so I couldn't pour into that work. I couldn't really fully focus on doing what I could be doing to contribute to the collective good because I was so focused on this heaviness, on this density, on this bad, hateful, divisive energy. And again, I'm not saying not to be informed. I'm not someone, I work in media relations. I work in social and racial equity. I have to be informed, and it's important to be informed. So that's not what I'm saying. And I don't want my words to get misconstrued. So I think it's important to note that. But you can be informed without giving all of your power and energy away to that thing. Instead, that energy, that passion you feel, that burning passion, that anger, that sacred rage, by the way, because I feel like we do not honor anger and sadness and grief the way that we should in our modern culture. And as we learn to unlearn some of these really unhealthy Western ideologies that are hyper individualistic and kind of robotic in a sense, at least to me, and I'm sorry if that offends or bothers anyone, it disconnects us to some degree from our humanness. We need to acknowledge these emotions, and we need to understand that the emotions themselves aren't bad. Again, going back to what I said earlier, they're all communicators and they're all energy, and they can be used for both bad and good. It's our choice. We have a choice. And right now, we're being made to feel powerless, like we don't have a choice, like we don't have a say, like there's nothing we can do. That is not true. It's not true. The powers that be are afraid of us realizing our power. They are afraid of us figuring out that we can actually come together and we can choose to put our energy and our rage and that passion and the grief and the heartache that we feel into something that's going to cause positive change, into something that's going to unify the people. Something that's so beautiful that I realized recently when I was, being petty and deciding that I'm never gonna touch Meta or TikTok or whatever again. I got on Red Note like many of us did, and I realized very quickly the power of unity, the power of coming together with an open heart and an open mind and learning about our differences and sharing our wisdom. And it's been heartwarming to see that, and it reminded me that this is powerful and this is needed, especially now, and that throughout history there have always been people like that. There have always been people who were bold enough and courageous enough to say this isn't right, and I'm going to try to do something about it in whatever way I can. And a lot of times I think we've been, in my opinion, very intentionally conditioned to believe it has to be this grandiose thing so that we get overwhelmed by it and we instead settle for complacency or this idea that there's just absolutely nothing we could do. So the best I can do is just go online and rant about it and, and in my immediate circles talk about it, but there's nothing I can do. So now I feel hopeless and now I'm in despair. And now I'm finding it hard to wake up and I'm having existential dread and it's hard to move forward and I don't know what to do. It's a lie. You are powerful. You're here because you need to be here. You're supposed to be here. You matter. You are important. And your brothers and sisters are important. And the rage and the pain and the grief and the fear and anxiety you feel, if you really dig into the core of it, it goes back to love. You are someone who is experiencing on a deep level in all these complex ways love. You love your fellow human beings. You know that they are your sisters and brothers, and you don't want to see people suffer. You don't want to suffer. You don't want your people to suffer. You don't want Mother Earth to suffer. That is love, and that is courageous, and that is powerful. And imagine if we all collectively start to remember, for one, how powerful that is, and for two, we get together now, and now we're coming together and we're working together, and we're doing something to create change, right? When I saw how quickly people were rallying in Southern California to support those impacted by the fire, there was fear, obviously, but then there was a part of me that was like, wow. I remember I've been really intentional recently about trying to listen to, stay informed, but also make sure I'm digesting good news. And so I was listening to Five Things, and I know CNN is very problematic right now, but I was listening to Five Good Things, and I was listening to the stories about local heroes, people in the community. I use heroes with quotes because I'm like literally thinking about Marvel. Forgive me for that. I am neurodivergent. But I was hearing stories of local heroes, of people who, maybe they opened up their businesses and they allowed people impacted by the fires to come in and seek shelter and get free food and just, hug and sit with them and grieve with them and hold space with them. People who quite literally went out with firefighters or went out with a hose in their lawn and was saving their neighbors' lawns. People who maybe they had never really even connected with or spoken to these people before were now risking their lives for these people. And these types of stories remind me that as much as there are shitty people in this world who are just stirring so much hate and division, there are really good people in this world too. Really good people in this world. And those are the people we deserve to have leading the charge. And if we want to see that happen, we can see that happen. We can. And we have to push away these ideas that there's nothing we can do, because that's bullshit. Excuse my language, but it's bullshit. There's always something we can do. It might not be as grandiose as you might be thinking, right? But even those small things matter. Those small things that you do matter, right? If you're someone who donated like even $10 to anyone who's been impacted by natural disasters, that makes a difference. That could be the difference between someone getting some clean water, some food. Like, you are impacting someone's life in a positive way, and that energy is, it continues to expand and grow. You're creating and putting out that energy into the world, and that's important and needed. And so I want you to, and you'll know what resonates for you. I encourage you to find at least one thing that you could be doing. And if you're someone you're like, I'm exhausted, I I'm overwhelmed, I'm too overwhelmed to even think about something I could be doing, resting is something you could be doing, giving your mind a break. Because again, just like I was saying, when I was going into the pits of despair late last year, I couldn't show up like that. I can't pour into community when I am like completely drained and just I'm just at the end of the rope. And for those of you who are new here, I am a survivor. So I'm not talking as someone who has never been to that low space. I've been to that low space. I've lived the majority of my life in that space. And so I 100% understand what it's like to feel like I can't contribute anything. I can't even show up for myself right now. Your presence matters and your energy matters, and you just taking care of yourself also has a ripple effect into the world. When I decided to be intentional about my healing and rest and give myself breaks, and not shame or guilt myself for taking those breaks and taking the time I need to tend to my heart space and to heal and take care of myself. And I just allowed myself to do it without shame, without judgment, without guilt. Once I was finally able to do that, then I could show up in ways that I wasn't even able to show up prior to that, because it's necessary, right? So part of this is, how can we show up and be in the collective, and how can we support in our local communities and get involved with community organizers or hold space. But it's just as important for you to be taking care of yourself and to recognize that your life matters. You matter. You deserve to rest. Your family deserves to rest. And if you're someone in a space right now where, especially if you're someone who's been directly impacted by a lot of these things, if just preserving your well-being and your mental health is the only thing you can do right now, then do that. Find moments of peace and stillness and joy and relaxation, even amidst this chaos that you feel. Find that, because that energy still matters, right? It goes out into the world, it goes out into the universe. You're pouring out good into this collective energy. We need that energy. It's just going to continue to ripple. And so when you take that time to sit with someone you trust and confide in them and share your worries and your fears and cry with them and hold space with them, or whether you've decide to take some time to just watch things that are lighthearted and wholesome and make you laugh and bring you joy, that energy is needed right now. So I want to just really stress that there is a big thing for me is nuance, and we have this very black or white thinking when it comes to how we show up in the world, how we do get involved, especially in critical times like this when it's very clear that we need to come together. I think it feels like we feel pressure to come together or do things or act in one specific way. We can't all be doing the same thing. We are different and the roles are different, and you need to have people doing different things. Imagine if everyone in the world was a lawyer, or if everyone in the world was a doctor. We need nurses. We need lawyers, we need artists, we need musicians, we need preachers. We need everybody. Everyone has a role to play, and that part will look different for everybody. I was talking to some good friends, and I just love them. Shout out to you, Kaylin, Doris, all my lovely friends. And I was just reminded that we all have such a different role to play in this life. Some of us are nurturers. Some of us are here to play and just like cause joy. There are people that when I'm around them, I just feel like a child again. I just feel so much joy. Those people have a gift, right? Bringing that joy into the world, making people laugh. I consider that light work. Some people have a strong sense of justice, like myself. Some people are more spiritually attuned. Some, like, we all have our role, we all have our gifts. And it's important for us to sit with ourselves and to take care of ourselves and nurture ourselves so that we can figure out what it is, for one, but also recognize that there are things that we can be doing. There is something we could all be doing, and it's not going to look the same as your neighbor. It's not going to look the same as your friend or the things that you see on social media. And I hope you don't feel pressured by those things. I hope that you can take the time to take care of yourself so that you can then discover what resonates for you. Maybe showing up for you is holding space for people. Maybe you bring people to your home. I had a good friend do that recently. Shout out for it. Beautiful, beautiful experience. And that is so important. And sometimes we sit and we talk about these things, like, this is what I want to do, and this is my hope. And it's like, I want to remind people that they're doing it. You are doing it. You are doing things that matter and that are needed, and you are being the change you wish to see in the world when you do things like that. It's not as complex as we make it seem. We make it seem like it has to be this huge, big thing, and it doesn't. You could literally just call some friends over and be like, hey, the world feels heavy. Are you losing your mind? I feel like I'm losing my mind. Do you want to come over? Do you want to like cry together? Do you want to hold space and like bake cookies and like drink tea and just, if you're in a position where you do have the privilege to do that, then do it, because that joy and that healing and that peace is needed in the energy, right? And then now you feel revived, and now you feel like, okay, what else can I do? Right? What else can I do? Can I go help somebody? Can I go buy somebody's coffee today? Can I go, like, can I donate to some of the communities that have been impacted? Can I, like, what can I be doing? There is something. There is something. And the more you start to pour into that, the more hope you can bloom out of that. And that hope is what carries us forward. It's what's always carried humans forward in the most tragic of times, the darkest of times. It's been hope. Go back and read any book of any tragic time throughout history, and that's something that will be consistent throughout. Is there had to be somebody to provide hope. And it looks different every time, right? So I'm hoping that this message does that at least a little bit for some of you. And I do want to share that I have a Substack, and I've been trying to compile resources there. And I just did a resource compilation for the LA wildfires, but I'm also planning to do one that's more broad. Just a bunch of different community organizations and just different activists and people and communities that are coming together to help people who are being impacted by all of the different terrible things that are happening. And also just finding ways to create spaces that do allow us to come together and heal and feel okay and breathe, right? And take a moment of pause and recenter ourselves and remind ourselves that we matter, our feelings matter, we are important, we are all connected, and there are things that we can do to make this world better. And we don't have to give in to this powerlessness or this despair that we feel. Regardless of what we see around us, there is something we can do. And so I'm really, really hoping that that helps. And if you are still really struggling right now, and I'm not saying any of this thinking that like the feelings that are in the collective are going to magically disappear, because by no means does it work like that. I'm still feeling those energies. I'm still feeling the heaviness and the weight. And I cry very often about it. But I'm also trying to, as much as I allow myself to grieve and to feel those emotions, I'm equally trying to find opportunities to pour into the community and to spread more love into this world. And sometimes I fail at that, and sometimes I get angry, and sometimes I do add to more of that fear and division. But I think that awareness that we do have a choice right now, even when it doesn't feel that way, even when things seem like there's nothing to be done. It's not true. It's BS. We are powerful, y'all. There's just so much we can do when we recognize that, and when we work together and we uplift each other and we help each other heal and find our purpose and our gifts, and pour into the world in the ways that resonate with us. And so I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to take care. Please take care of yourself. If you're in a position where you can just go take some time, rest, relax, breathe, meditate. If you're someone who's spiritual, do your rituals, pray, take a spiritual bath, clean your energy, smudge your home, do what you need to do, right? And then find the ways to pour into yourself and pour into those around you, pour into your communities, because it's time. We need to do that. We need to come together. And I refuse to be someone that sits idly by while these terrible things happen to my brothers and sisters in this world. There's something we can do. And so I think sitting with ourselves recognizing our gifts and finding that way forward is the best thing we can be doing. I'm sending so much love, so much love, so much love. If you found this, I hope and pray that you are safe and blessed and that spirit is watching over you, and that any pain or heaviness that you feel is just removed right now. And I really thank you for listening to this. And I really, really hope that you are able to find some reprieve for your mind, for your heart, for your spirit. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath every day. Find some time to center yourself every day. Check out when you need to and tap back in the way that resonates with your spirit. And I'll leave you with that. Yeah. So until next time, bye.